His seat. We're such a cooperative group. Good morning. Welcome. I'm Jan Shorey. I'm this year's chair of the Group on Faculty Affairs, and in that capacity, it is my great pleasure to welcome you here to Seattle and to this year's Professional Development Conference. It's wonderful to see you. This is a group that welcomes people by nature. We do that in our home institutions, and we really do it here too. I extend a very special welcome to those of you who are coming to your first Group on Faculty Affairs meeting. You will have noticed that your name badges are sporting some combination of teal, blue, and white ribbons. The purpose of that is to identify you to those who've been around this organization for just a little while longer, so that they'll make special effort to greet you and help you learn what we do. We're really big on networking. So it's a very special welcome to folks who are here for the first time. Would you raise your hands? Wow. This morning, about 15 minutes ago, Valerie Clark handed me my first housekeeping task. Here it is. Dear presenters, we know that you have done wonderful work long into nights and weekends to prepare your slides. You have done abysmal work turning them in. And that's a problem, and I know you'll fix it. The means by which you should fix it this morning is to take your flash drive out to the registration desk and find Rachel Bradshaw, who has been waiting and waiting and waiting for you since July 19th. Please take your flash drive to Rachel so that she can upload your slides, because your audience wants them. And then if in the course of your session, as Mary Moran and I learned yesterday, better ideas came from our audience, we're going to edit our slides. Ours are there. We turned ours in. Mary did it. We're going to take the good ideas that our participants gave us and edit our slides, and so within a week or so, the edited slides will be there. I say that because it's true for Mary and me, and it can be true for all of you. So if you make real-time edits, please send those edited versions to Rachel later, but this morning, get her the current version. Thank you, end of pitch. Now, this year, our program planning subcommittee has literally been working for 12 months to put together the program that you will participate in for the next 2.5 days. I predict wonderful things are going to happen. They've been very thoughtful, and you all, the presenters, both of posters and workshops and the plenaries, have really worked hard to put together great things. So that will be wonderful in this meeting, and I bet the networking will too. This morning, we're starting this program in a very special way. It's a first for us. We're starting with a celebration of a fabulous woman. Sorry. We will be making the award for the inaugural Carole J. Award. You will hear much more about Carole in just a few moments, but many of you know that she's a woman who was absolutely critically giving to faculty in her institution and to all of us as we learned what faculty development and mentoring might well be for academic people in medicine. So it is with just delight that I give you Valerie Williams to tell us about this award. Valerie is well known to most of this community. She is a lady who helped guided the very creation of the Group on Faculty Affairs. So it's very fitting that she tell us about the Carole J. Bland Award and help make its inaugural presentation.
Good morning, everyone. I've asked Carole's husband, Dick Bland, to join me up here because he's going to also share a few words with us. But what a remarkable day this is to actually have an opportunity to celebrate together. And I think that we need to get some energy into this, so I'm going to say, have you celebrated anything recently? Anybody? Well, whatever it was, think about that, and think about that multiplied by everybody in this room, and give everyone a round of applause for just being here. You know, beginnings are kind of an amazing time, and I want to reflect with you just for a little bit on a little bit of GFA's history and how we got to this day, because I think part of why we are here able to celebrate today is because of so many little things that have happened along the way to this time, this moment, this day in Seattle for all of us. The GFA, as a little group, started almost 20 years ago with a gathering of faculty from the colleges of medicine around the country who had this extraordinary array of titles, something which you'll see is continued to be carried through as you think about what your titles and the titles are of your colleagues today. And those people came together thinking that through some kind of forum and some kind of exchange of ideas and thinking about the issues affecting us and our faculty and our colleges, we might be able to do something better, to help something change, to make something happen that hadn't been happening as yet. And there was a growing and emerging body of literature about faculty affairs and faculty development. And our colleague Carole Bland was one of the critical contributors to that work. And she had just written, probably 2 years before we got together, I think the book was published, Successful Faculty in Academic Medicine. If you haven't seen it, you should read it. It actually is a book I think that is almost timeless in terms of the way we think about what happens to faculty and in their responsibilities and roles. And many of us in that forum, we experimented over those years. We had meetings where we had conversation cafes. We had meetings where we were asked to be like a butterfly, go where you think you're interested. You know, we all bore with that. Coming out of academic medicine, we weren't used to all of these wild ideas and how that would play out in a scientific meeting, in a congress of people like ourselves. And yet, all those little experiments and all of the work that people like yourselves have done around the country has begun to build steam. And it began to build, to be the beginnings of a new day for faculty affairs and faculty development. And in 2004, we were tasked from the community to actually think about becoming a Big G group in AAMC. Now, Big G group is one that has actually presented its values, its bylaws, its kind of governance and operations plan, its ideas about what is its critical and core purpose to the larger body of what was then the governing board for AAMC, and gotten approval from the organization to actually form a real group. And we did that. And in that process, we had to start thinking about, okay, well, now that we're a Big G, that means we actually have to make something happen for real, because we're now not just meeting casually, now we're official. So give us a hand around official, because now you're all official and part of that, so. Little things, little beginnings. And Carole's work seeded some of that for us, because that literature was out there saying that our faculty were critical and what it is that we could do to help them move forward. And our colleagues in this community and in the Group on Educational Affairs, which are probably, again, the central group around what happens in academic medicine, started really thinking and testing that work and bringing new ideas to the table and building on that initial legacy, that initial beginning. So we started thinking in the steering committee, well, how do we acknowledge the work that's gone on? Yes, we can all write papers, we can do the typical work in academic medicine, we can do our jobs well, we can make our jobs an avocation rather than just a vocation, but how do we really tell people about and honor and recognize what it means to be truly committed? And you never want to be in a room with Henry Strobel when you've asked a philosophical question. Because Henry was part of the membership committee, the membership and nominating committee, along with Janice Apted and Janice Letourneau and Greg Service, James Weiss, who was our Organization on Resident Representatives rep. I hope I didn't miss anybody, but there may have been. Mary Moran was in that group. And we got into this conversation about, well, what does this mean then to be committed to other people and the development of their growth and talent? And the word phronesis arose. And Henry told us about what that meant, and we kept asking questions, and we were trying to think, okay, Henry, so you're in this world with phronesis. Now, what does that mean in real life? And we started thinking of examples and exemplars about what was that. And we came up with this list of things, and you've seen the list, and I'm not going to go through it, but part of that conversation was also talking about, well, who do we who's represented that for us? And Carole's name kept coming up. And because there's so much evidence over time, and of course not Carole alone, but she seeded so many things and gave so willingly to other people of her time, of her talent, her ideas. She was willing to get her hands dirty, which was actually, it's not written in there quite that directly, but she would get down in there and really try to help figure out, how do we make this work? What do we learn about it as we're making it work? What do we see that needs to be different? How do we apply that to the next thing, that next beginning? So the award was thus created, the Carole J. Phronesis Award. And because Carole is such an amazing person, we asked Dick Bland if he would join us today. We asked for his permission to name the award. We asked for lots of permission about doing this because for us this is a big thing. So I want to turn the podium over to Dick to talk a little bit about Carole, if she would mind, and let us think about her in this celebration.
Well, I must say I'm glad I didn't have a PowerPoint presentation that I promised, because Valerie Clark would be all over me this morning. My reflection on Carole. It is synonymous with a passion for education, a passion to be educated herself, and a passion to educate others. I have had friends who have high school children ready to go off to college. And they take them to various campuses and make sure it's the right fit, and then they take them to the school when it's time to register and get them all settled in. Carole and her family didn't have that financial luxury. She never saw the campus that she attended until she went there in the fall of 1964. At that time, she packed up her clothes and belongings in some cardboard boxes, boarded a Greyhound bus, and traveled across the state of South Dakota from Rapid City, her home, to Sioux Falls, where Augustana became her home. And she loved that school. She was excited about going to classes, would talk about what she was learning, and was excited about her professors, this passion to be educated. And that continued then through a master's degree at Drake University. And then Carole and I moved to Minneapolis because she wanted to pursue her Ph.D. She did that, completing that in 1974. And for those of you who have gone through a Ph.D. program and the dissertation process, she even enjoyed that. She got some pleasure out of that, which is, as I understand it anyway, not having done it, is sort of a remarkable feat. After completing her Ph.D., she joined the University of Minnesota as a faculty member, where she remained for the next 34 years. And what did she do there? What she loved to do: teach, educate, help others, promote success unselfishly. And she did it with a passion. In 1974, when she joined the medical school, a woman working with male physicians on how to teach, because many physicians who wanted to come back to academic medicine had been chemistry and biology majors and didn't have teaching skills, which presented some interesting issues at that time, but none too challenging for Carole. She was born to be in an academic environment. She loved to do research, and most importantly, loved to share that information. She'd get phone calls from people all over the country asking for advice, and as email became more prevalent, she'd get emails from all over the country and even internationally, and always take the time to respond. And why? Because she believed that was part of her obligation as an academician. You learn information, and then you share it. There's no financial reward. There's no immediate apparent reward at all, but you do it. In 1989 and 1990, she became an ACE, American Council on Education Fellow. And as she moved through the ranks at the University of Minnesota, she became more and more involved in faculty development, faculty affairs, informally early, and then obviously more formally later. Her last position in the medical school at the university was the assistant dean for faculty development. And the names of her books that she has published, I think, provide a good view of her academic interests. Faculty Development Through Workshops, Successful Faculty in Academic Medicine, the one that Valerie Williams referenced, The Vitality of Senior Faculty Members, the Research Productive Department, and Faculty Success Through Mentoring. And then this organization, AAMC, was important to her life early on. She was eager to attend these annual meetings, eager to see and talk with her national colleagues, many of whom became her friends, to share ideas. The legacy one leaves behind is the impact, I think, that you've had on others. And for Carole, that's an immense. She leaves behind a trail of awards in her honor and in her memory of what she has done. A few months before she died, she was awarded the Distinguished Career Award by the American Educational Research Association. The undergrad school that she started her education at, Augustana College. She became actively involved there. She was on the board of trustees. They've established an annual award in her name, the Carole Bland Cultivating Faculty Excellence Award. The University of Minnesota Medical School has likewise established an award in her name, the Carole Bland Outstanding Faculty Mentor Award, recognizing her as the principal architect for mentoring programs in the university's medical school. In addition, at the University of Minnesota, each year a few select faculty are inducted into the Academy for Excellence in the Scholarship for Learning and Teaching. And there's a reception that follows the induction ceremony, and that reception is now named the Carole Bland Memorial Reception, again in honor of her focus on faculty development. And now this wonderful achievement, acknowledgement from an organization that meant so much to her. Phronesis, I think the definition fits Carole to a T. She would be most grateful and appreciative for this, as am I. Thank you on behalf of both of us.
What do you say after that? Wow. It is an amazing thing to leave a legacy of your work. Carole left much of hers through her life and the way that she lived it, being engaged with others, always thinking, always willing to ask the next question, and to share what she learned with others and to learn more as she was going through that process. And I want to read you an excerpt of the letter of nomination as we get prepared to tell you who our award winner is for this inaugural award of the Carole J. Bland Phronesis Award. We think today about faculty vitality, about those words. It's pretty common to hear us talk that language. I mean, there have been initiatives, there have been papers written, there's been thought given to that in our meetings over the years. But do you know where that word first came from, its first use around in this environment, around faculty vitality and what that is? Do you know who thought about what the faculty life cycle looks like in our schools, now something that we base our work on going forward? Have you thought about some of the work that's contributed to thinking about the scholarship of teaching and how that's come about in our field and that aspect of the work of faculty in academic medicine? And the colleague that we are honoring today, in addition to Carole Bland by naming this award for her, has contributed centrally to all of that work. It's Tom Viggiano. Most most of you, many of you probably know Tom or have read his work, and I want to read you a couple of excerpts from his nomination and just some thoughts that I've had to want to share with you. Together, Tom, Viggiano, and Henry Strobel first conceptualized the term faculty vitality and promoted these concepts and built that into this idea of a life cycle model to sustain faculty vitality over time in their work in academic medicine. They thought about the health of faculty and how that fares as people go through the work every day. And Tom has continued to write and speak about the importance of faculty being engaged in feedback with their students and looking at that process as a rich opportunity for learning, for development and growth, for the development of professionalism, and for these young practitioners to enter the field of medicine. Tom has worked on improving the medical school curriculum. He has been vitally involved in the planning committees of many organizations, and we directly benefited from that during 2004 and 2006 when Tom chaired the planning committee for the creation of the Big G group on faculty affairs in the AAMC. He was our ambassador to a community of folks who might have been somewhat skeptical because everyone believes that they have a connection to the faculty. They're so central to what our colleges of medicine are able to do, and yet in our offices, we see the various pieces of that come together. So Tom had the big job of trying to convince and engage people who thought that the responsibility for faculty should rest here or here or here. And he did that by a process of his engagement in this group over time of being a true collaborator, of looking at this as a partnership, and of thinking about how do we house and bring together that collaboration and engage people through liaison roles, through partnership and presentations, through the scholarly work to actually help us move forward as colleges for what we need to do in taking care of our faculty and thinking about their futures. Tom has held the title of Associate Dean at the Mayo for 10 years. He's known to be a soft-spoken yet thoughtful individual. He has an intelligent approach to things, but he has a calm demeanor. He is generally a good guy. He's fun to hang out with. He has wonderful stories about his family. Just some of the things that he's done with them on Halloween, it just amazed me. And most recently, he's been honored as the laureate for the Central Group of the Southern Education Association, the GEA, SGEA, CGEA, the Central Group on Educational Affairs, with their laureate award, which he received in 2010. Congratulations on that. That's wonderful. He's also just very recently had a paper accepted in academic medicine in answer to the question of the year. Stephen Cantor has been proposing these questions of the year, and Tom's essay on, the interprofessional educational competencies for collaborative care was just accepted, and it'll be published in November. So I am delighted to honor and recognize our colleague, Tom Viggiano, and call him to the stage for a few remarks. Tom, congratulations.
I've always considered it a great privilege to be a physician and to be involved in educating other healthcare providers. And I really do believe that having this privilege is the greatest reward in itself. And I was telling Val, ever since I got the call from Jan about the Carole Bland Award, my nature is not to get too full of awards or things that I do, not to waste time patting myself on the back or thinking that I'm, succeeding at some of these challenges, but just to keep plugging away. And so this one was different. It was like a paradox for me. It's like, wait, why am I was so honored. And it took me a while, I said, gee, I better figure this out. And then they said, well, you have to make some remarks whenever you get this. And I go, oh, geez. Okay. And then the other piece of it was I felt like an imposter. I thought, there's a lot of people in this room that deserve to be recognized. As Val said, there's so many small things that we've done. And so Valerie Clark, who I always listen to, almost always, Valerie, said, well, why don't you talk about some of your work, some of the things that you've done, how Carole Bland has fit into it, and why this award is so meaningful, why this one is different. When I was a young gastroenterologist, I was trying to figure out my way in academic medicine, and I'll never forget on a training run with one of my colleagues from GI, who later became my division chair, and as we were running, he said, I published a few papers in GI, but I was doing a lot in the medical school. And he said to me, he said, Tom, listen, you're never going to get anywhere in education. You're never going to be promoted for it. You're wasting your time. It's a black hole. And I went home and I thought about it, and wow, he was right. He was right. And it was so honest and so heartfelt. And I thought, wow, he's absolutely right. So I started to think about it. And the problem I had is that I didn't have any choice. I'm an educator. So I went back and we had other conversations because he was kind of a mentor to me. And I said, what you have to understand is that I felt called to do this. I cannot not do it. And he kind of reluctantly understood. And then I'll never forget the expression on his face. And I looked at him and I said, this academic promotion and education, it doesn't have to be this way. And I think he looked at me like I was nuts and totally unrealistic, which I probably was. So over the years then, instead of listening to his advice, I actually got more involved in education. But it was really wonderful. We had some problems with our curriculum. We applied improvement science to curriculum evaluation, and it paid off in a very big way. We shared that nationally and internationally at education meetings. Developed an interest in curriculum integration to really make it a coherent learning program. And my partners in that were basic scientists, and I started hanging out with a bunch of basic scientists, and boy, were they disenfranchised. They felt like they were getting aced out, that medical school was going in a direction where the sciences that were so critical to my solving patients' problems were being edited out of the curriculum. That doesn't make any sense. And with a group of, the AAMC had a basic science special interest group. And then one year, the AAMC said, we have to dissolve all these. There's too many special interest groups. And so we had nowhere else to go. And so a group of us sat down, and again, a group of people said it doesn't have to be this way. And we formed a group that initially was called the Basic Science Education Forum, and now is called the International Association of Medical Science Educators. And it's still, in my opinion, the premier organization for talking about how basic sciences are integrated into a clinical curriculum. And if you've never gone to one of their meetings, it's absolutely outstanding. Encourage your basic science faculty especially to go there. I think they'll find it wonderful. So then I started getting interested in education as maybe something I could do some research in. And so I got a degree in education. Over the years, not sure how it happened, but ultimately I was promoted to a professor based largely on a balance of clinical and educational contributions. And I thought it was absolutely wonderful. But when I looked at the path that I had to go through, there really wasn't a path. And that didn't seem right. It didn't seem that it really had to be that way either. And so we designed a program at Mayo called the Education Innovation Award, where we provided money and protected time for young people who might want to follow in education. And it was chosen as a project for the Group on Educational Affairs Scholarship Project. And so way back at the very beginning, we got involved with the scholarship project, which is to make education a legitimate scholarly activity that is rewarded with academic promotions in every institution in this country, if we can do that. And we're still working on that, and there's a workshop about that at this meeting. So, yeah, I guess around this time, after I had been at this point in my career, they came to me and asked me if I'd like to be a faculty affairs dean. And I said, what does a faculty affairs dean do? And I got the best answer ever. They said, we don't know. Why don't you figure it out? I said, yes. I could write my own job description. I mean, we had some workshops in place. And so that was when I first connected to the Faculty Affairs Professional Development Group, I think they call it. I can't even remember the name. But I met a bunch of you, and all of you inspired me. I also began reading relentlessly, and the work that really connected with me was Carole Blantz. And the wonderful thing is that she was just up the road at the University of Minnesota. And so I emailed Carole one day, and I was very happy. I've saved these emails, kind of my way of holding on to her, I guess. And so I sent her a really nice email, and I told her that her work was invaluable to what I was trying to do, and that it was really putting things into perspective, and that I'd like to come up and meet her. And I got the most gracious reply, and we called each other, and with a little bit of difficulty, we arranged a time, and it was going to be 1 hour. And I drove up, and I knew as soon as I got there that there's all these papers, and there's calls, and Carole, do this. And she was very, very busy. And she said she closed her door, we sat down, and she actually spent an hour and a half, even though I knew she didn't have that time. And we had an amazing conversation about what the problems were, what needs to be done, what the inequities were, what opportunities there were to make a difference. And I drove home, and I felt that I had been with an old friend, that she was so gracious and so generous. And, I told Dick I loved her from the minute I met her. So around this same time, Paige Morahan, Janet Bickle, they surveyed all the medical schools in North America. This is the year 2000. This is only a decade ago. No medical school reported having in place a comprehensive program to help their faculty. None. Zero. And the ones who did have offices were staffed with volunteers, and they did not have budgets. It was funded with soft money that could dry up at any time. So, wow. We went to the 2002 annual AMC meeting, and there was a session on the issues of faculty, and it was presented by student affairs deans. And it was nice, but they didn't get down into the nitty-gritty of what we need to talk about. And so a group of faculty affairs deans came out of the meeting, and they said, why don't we have coffee tomorrow? And there's a number of people in this room that went to coffee. And we concluded that we were invisible, that there were profound needs in our institutions and not real capability to address those needs. And it didn't have to be that way. And so we decided that we were going to try to create programs that would add value. So we had a meeting in 2003, the steering committee of the group had a meeting in Washington, D.C., and we wanted to talk to Joe Keyes, who was the executive vice president. And this was going to be interesting because there's people shaking their heads that remember this, because the approach going around the table was that we were going to pound our fist on the table and tell them that we deserved to be a group on faculty affairs, or we were going to have a conversation with them. And fortunately, Joe came in, and he was very good, and he said, you don't know what you're getting into. Do you know what you have to go through to be a big group? And he laid out all these hurdles. And actually, we looked at each other and said, who has the time to do this? But we did make a decision that we weren't going to look like a political action committee, that we were going to show the needs that existed in our institution and the capability that a group of people working together to solve them, how that could benefit our institutions and make the AAMC more responsive to what we need to do. And that's what we did. And a milestone for us was in 2004, where as part of that program committee meeting, we said, how can we show? And we decided that we would look at the entire career of a faculty member, maybe a life cycle model, and that we would try to understand what type of support is needed at different phases during that life cycle. And Henry Strobel and I volunteered to try to learn something about that. And we did. And our work was heavily informed by Carole Bland. In fact, the life cycle is a developmental theory, and developmental theories have a goal towards which people work. And the goal that we worked for was vitality. It was Carole's construct of where we all want to be, loving our work, contributing maximally, making a difference. So we presented it, and it resonated very well with our group. Diane McGrain was at the AAMC, and she chose that as the platform for the group and for our work. And we realized, Joe Keyes told us, it's probably going to take a decade for you guys to be a big group. And so okay, keep our head down, keep going. And we started to partner with other groups like the Women in Medicine, the Council of Teaching Hospitals. Anybody that could partner about a topic of mutual interest, because our faculty was really suffering at that time. And we continued to have good programs, and the next thing you know, we've got a formal invitation to be a big group. It happened in less than a year and a half. Absolutely amazing. And as Val said, it's because all of you did a lot of little things. So we came actually to Seattle, and we were formally instated here in Seattle as the Group on Faculty Affairs. A wonderful, meaningful thing was there was a plenary session about faculty vitality in the life cycle, and I got to be a panelist with Carole. And it was amazing almost in a way, she was treating me as if I was an equal. And I still thought of her as my mentor. But it was just a wonderful experience, a great discussion, well attended, and we were on the move. We were finally a credible force. The speaker that year was Jim Collins, who's talked about good to great. And I'll mention why that may or may not be a coincidence, or I don't understand some of these things. And so later, I continued to correspond with Carole about mentoring. I was invited to write a book chapter, and Carole's work on mentoring at the university is just outstanding. And so part of the paradox, why did I'm still thinking, why does this mean so much to me? And it means so much to me. The first reason is because it's in honor of Carole Bland. And I tried to think, why she's so special. And I could mention a lot of qualities, and Dick, you mentioned some, but this may sound a little soft and fuzzy to all of you, but what I have concluded in preparing these remarks is the reason that she was so special is that she did everything with great love. As a mentor, as a colleague, as a friend, she was a masterpiece. And so then I said, okay, well, that's part of it, but fro-NEE-sis. I'll never forget the day I got the letter from AAMC. I opened it up and said, the Carole J. Bland Award. I said, that's so cool. The GFA is so cool. And it said Phronesis, and I immediately thought of two things. That is so cool. And Henry Strobel's on the loose again. And I was right. I didn't know that until today when Valerie was making her remarks. I said, well, because the discussions when we talked about the life cycle, yes, there's a way that you can provide support and do this, but that's not really what we need to do. We need to understand that we aspire to do something that's really good. We want to heal people, we want to advance medical science, and we want to teach the next generation to do those things. There's a German poet, Rainer Maria Rilke, who says that it's really that's in our midst. It is the grace of the great things. These are the great things that we do, the work that we do. And so why is it that in every one of our institutions we spend so much time talking about all these dysfunctions, all these backdoor deals, old boy networks? Why aren't women advancing? Why aren't minorities given the same resources? Why are educators not promoted? And Henry and I, again, thought, it really doesn't have to be that way. Maybe we could say we stand and we attempt to do some things that are pretty virtuous, not patting ourselves on the back, but we're into some good stuff. Why don't we behave as virtuously as our mission is? Why do we have all this stuff? And so the more important piece to us wasn't only the life cycle, it was to try to change the culture of an institution so that we really behaved in a way that was commensurate with the work that we tried to do. And that involved a key construct that Henry and I agree from the work of Aristotle, that's phronesis. Phronesis. There's a number of definitions. You have one about the heroic selflessness to advance others. There's other definitions. It is practical wisdom. That's what drew me to Carole Bland's work. Practical wisdom. Religions refer to it or think of it as a virtue, and it's often called prudence. But it's more than that, because it's more than an intellectual capability or a character trait. A great operational definition of phronesis is the capability to discern and do what is most virtuous for the community that you serve. Discerning and doing. As I thought about it, that's, I think, what my parents tried to teach me. That's the way I want to live my life. That's what I'm trying to teach my children and my students in our faculty. That's what So, boy, the second reason became clear. This is really what it's about. These are the values that we should try to live. So then, okay, I think I'm starting to figure this out, but there's something else here. What is it? And it is the group on faculty affairs. It's actually a misnomer. We should be called the family on faculty affairs. We're really connected to each other. I have never met a group of people who inspire me more. I know the work that you do. I know the battles that you're fighting in your institutions. I've visited some of your institutions. Every day you go in and selflessly, like servant leaders, try to address diversity, equity, unfair policies, and you strive to try to create that state of vitality where we could all work in a place that we really wanted to belong to. And so I see you all as phronetic leaders, but I also thought, wow, why do I like these folks so much? And I came back to good to great. One of the things that I remember the most about Good to Great was Jim Collins's findings on leadership. He said, when you looked at the companies who became great, from good to great, from little g to big G, by the way, there were two qualities of these leaders that really stood out. Humility and fierce resolve. Wow, that's who you guys are. There's other leadership literature that talks about authenticity. It's really understanding that when you lead something, it's not about you or how clever you are. It is about how authentically you serve the cause. And as I thought about that, I thought, well, how could I give you guys an example? And the example that I think best exhibits this was actually Mother Teresa. She simply picked up people in the gutter in Calcutta and handled them with such love. And the next thing you know, all these orphanages, all these nurseries. When she received the Nobel Prize, the media asked her questions, and one of the questions that she got was, you founded, thousands of orphanages, hospitals, clinics, and schools. Amazing. How can you explain that you were able to do such great things? And Mother Teresa smiled and looked at the reporter and said, in this life, we cannot do great things. We can only do small things with great love. And it became clear to me. I guess that part of the reason I feel like an imposter is that you guys are my heroes. You do small things with great love. And so the paradox no longer exists. This award is amazing. It comes from a community of people who show great love. It celebrates the values that have defined and guided my life, my work, and it honors the life of a woman who is a gift that just keeps on giving. So instead of saying, gee, well, this award isn't so big, I probably will sleep with it tonight. I'm going to put it in a place where I can look at it every day. And when I look at it, I'll know how fortunate I was to have been touched by Carole Blant. I'll center myself on humility, resolve, and great love. And it will remind me of the privilege and the blessing that you guys have been in my life. So, thank you.
So, Tom, we're going to present you this award. George, over here. So, this lovely little certificate, which I will let you open. But this is what you'll be sleeping with. I don't know your wife will like that so much. What an amazing time to have together to really celebrate the lives of people who have left a legacy for us and the lives of people who are still here in this room with us and creating those beginnings. You know, it's only in hindsight, right? We look back and you can see how small things have become something extraordinary. And every person in this room has begun something. The colleagues that aren't able to be with us today who are back at home have started something. They're thinking, they're trying to do better, they're looking for ways to take those next steps. So I'm going to charge everyone here to think about where those legacies will be next year and who will be recognizing, and to charge you to go home and think about who is it that's taken those small steps in the beginning, figured out it doesn't have to be this way, as Tom said, and is ready to help take us the next steps to make sure that our faculty have vital and exciting lives in our academic medical institutions. So on your tables is the card, if Valerie Clark is holding one up, announcing the timeline for the next award process. And I'd like to close this by actually giving Tom another standing ovation, and Dick for being here with us today, to say thank you so much for this celebration.